part 2 of the 2008 final, section A, say that states choose on the same day. Represent this as a strategic form game and find all pure strategy Nash equilibrium and mixed strategy Nash equilibrium. So here is the strategic form game where B represents brewery and W represents the state winery. Hilton is one of the candidates and O'Hara is one of the candidates. Both states prefer to have party unity. That is why where both choose the same candidate, there is a higher payoff. However, brewery would prefer Hilton and winery would prefer O'Hara. In order to find the pure Nash equilibrium, you have to compare the choices for one state when the other state has already made a decision. So, for example, when winery is Hilton, then you'll look to see if brewery chooses Hilton or if brewery chooses O'Hara, which of the two has a higher payoff. So in this instance, 4 is the higher payoff, and so they would choose to select Hilton. Here, when winery chooses O'Hara, brewery would prefer to choose O'Hara, as it has the higher payoff. To do this for winery, you do the same thing following the same logic, but you look row to row instead of column to column. So here, when brewery chooses Hilton, winery can either choose Hilton for a payoff of 3 or O'Hara for a payoff of 2. So since they have a higher payoff for Hilton, they choose Hilton. Same thing here. When brewery chooses O'Hara, winery would choose to also select O'Hara because it has the higher payoff. So you can tell that this is a pure strategy Nash equilibrium because if one of the states were to deviate, they would not be able to gain a higher payoff. So when brewery chooses Hilton, winery will also choose Hilton, and when brewery chooses O'Hara, winery will also choose O'Hara. In order to find the mixed Nash equilibrium, you have to first assign these values. So here is a P, and then this will be 1 minus P. Here is a Q, and this is 1 minus Q. So when winery chooses O'Hara, then the value is 1 minus Q, and when winery chooses Hilton, the value is Q. So then we do this probability formula where we set these two equations equally to each other. This is for brewery, so you get these numbers looking at back up in the strategic form game. So when brewery chooses Hilton, then they have a 4, and then winery's choice is represented as a Q, hence the 4Q. When brewery chooses Hilton and winery chooses O'Hara, then that's a 2 for brewery, and then 1 minus Q represents winery's decision. So then that's 2 times 1 minus Q. And then you set that equal to brewery's second choice. So 1 times Q and 3 times 1 minus Q. Then you just algebraically solve this to get Q equals 1/4. So you can just write this in as Q equals 1/4 here. And then here, 1 minus Q, so 1 minus 1/4 equals 3/4. Now you just do the same thing for winery. So you just do the probability equation here, where you get P equals 3/4. Again, P is representative of brewery's probability, so then that's P equals 3/4. And then this one would be 1/4. So then the mixed Nash equilibrium is that brewery chooses Hilton, with a probability of 3/4, and then winery chooses Hilton with a probability of 1/4. And also brewery chooses O'Hara with a probability of 1/4, and winery chooses O'Hara with a probability of 3/4. In section B, now we're going to say that breweries' primary is in September, so they choose first, and we modeled this as an extensive form game. So here we have brewery, and there are two choices between either Hilton or O'Hara. And then once they've decided, then the decision goes to winery, where they can also choose between Hilton and O'Hara. The payoffs are the same as they are on the strategic form game. So what you're going to want to do is use backwards induction and look to see, for instance, like if you were winery here, would you choose either the 3 or the 2? So because 3 has the higher payoff, you would choose 3. Then if you were to do the same thing here with this choice, between the 1 and the 4, you would choose 4. So then there are the arrows representing that choice. Then now the decision goes back to brewery, where they can now either choose between the 4 and the 3. So ideally, brewery would want the highest payoff possible, so they would choose Hilton. However, if they were to choose O'Hara, they would also be in a subgame perfect Nash equilibrium. So basically then, the subgame perfect Nash equilibrium is that B plays H and W plays H, and brewery plays O'Hara when winery plays O'Hara. So yeah. In section C, now the primaries come first for winery. So it's the same sort of thing, except for now winery is choosing first between H and O, and then brewery chooses between H and O, and the same thing here. The payoffs are the same as they follow in the strategic form game. Following backwards induction, you see that brewery here would choose Hilton over O'Hara, and you can see here that brewery would choose O'Hara over Hilton. With these two choices, winery would prefer to choose O'Hara over Hilton. So then over here you see that the subgame perfect Nash equilibrium is that winery plays O'Hara, and brewery plays O'Hara, and then winery plays Hilton when brewery plays Hilton. Coming down to part D, so brewery is still selecting first, but now winery cares more about voicing their own opinion. So because of that, whenever winery gets the candidate that they prefer, who is O'Hara, they have an extra point of E. So wherever you see O'Hara that's selected, then you add plus E to winery's payoff. So what would happen in this case is that because winery is choosing here and here, they would still want O'Hara. So here 4 is always going to be greater than 1, even with the addition of E. Here you have 3 or 2 plus E. So if E is greater than 1, then winery will always choose O. However, if E is less than 1, winery will choose Hilton because of the higher payoff. So essentially, E has to be at least 1 for O to be chosen, O'Hara to be chosen. Coming down to section E, now there's a third person who is deciding which of the two states to have vote first. So the party leader would prefer, party leader is here, PL, would prefer to have Hilton over O'Hara. And then once that's decided, then it gets passed down to the two states, brewery and winery, who then choose, and then whichever state isn't selected first, then also chooses. So the extensive form game here represents every possible scenario depending on who chooses what when, along with all of the possible payoffs. So in this instance here, you can see that winery, in this case, would choose H over O. That's why their arrow is green there. Here they would choose, again, O over H. And then here, brewery is the second state to vote, because of the party leader's choice to initially pass it to winery. For brewery, 4 is greater than 1, so they would choose to go with Hilton. For winery, for brewery here, 3 is greater than 2, so they would choose O'Hara. Now doing the backwards induction, you go back to winery here. Winery would then choose between the 3 and the 4. They would choose the 4. So then, they would choose here. Here, between this 3 and this 4, between this 4 and this 3, brewery would choose this 3, so they would then vote for Hilton. Now it goes back to the party leader, where they can either choose between the utility of 3 or the utility of 2 based off these other states' decisions. Because the party leader would want the higher payoff, they would then choose 3. So in that case, the party chooses Hilton.